Hello and welcome to this week's look at action and stunts on film and television. How are you? Good to see you again. Thanks for dropping by. You will know if you have watched last week's show and listened to this week's podcast, we are exploring the world of Cutthroat Island, which was, 94, 95 maybe, I think it came out. And had all the hallmarks of being an absolute belter from start to finish. It's directed by Rennie Harlan, who, of course, gave us Cliffhanger, amongst certain other bits and pieces. And his wife, Gina Davis, is the star of the picture. So it's a husband and wife thing. And that kind of explains a great deal about what's going on in the picture, because Rennie obviously demands a great deal of his wife on the screen at any given time. Matthew Modine is the co-star, but originally Michael Douglas had signed up to do it, and of course he was a bigger name than Gina Davis, so wanted that bigger name at the start of the picture, and then they came to some sort of agreement, and then another draft of the script turned up, and Michael Douglas took one look at it and went, no, I'm fine, thank you very much, walked away, kept the fee, right? They gave him the money, so already you can sense that there's an issue with the money, and the finances of this picture are a little crazy. And a bit further down the line, well, they had Oliver Reed. Oliver Reed was going to make a cameo. Paid him too. Got himself into a bit of a fight. You know, the way Ollie does. He's done a couple of days' work and he's gone off to relax and to meet the locals. It was in Malta, after all. He's a big fan of Malta, we know this. Ultimately, that's where he died, in Malta. But he was a big fan, had a few drinks, had a bit of a fight, and whilst being under the influence of, you know, the huge quantity of alcohol that he would have consumed that one afternoon, accidentally, allegedly made some form of lewd or inappropriate either comment or approach or even pass. Maybe he made a pass at her. Gina Davis, who didn't take very kindly to the whole thing, and went and told her husband, who's the director of the film, right? You see how this is working. He's taken one look at the whole situation and thought, well, we can jog along quite nicely without you, cheers, Ollie, so go and do one. And that's but he kept the fee. Again, you know, if you've, for whatever reason, assaulted my wife, I'm going to have the money back. I mean, you're not going to get paid for that, you know. Anyway, they were different times. And Caraloca, the film company at the top of all of this, of course, they had a bit of a track record, and this was the movie that just drained them dry. And Rennie Harlan, again, you have to take everything, look at it from both sides. All right. They've had some issues with the production. There's been some injuries. There's been a whole bunch of setbacks. There's been location changes. There's been changes in the casting. There's been accidents that, you know, things went on fire. At one point, one of the ships that they were filming on, the two big ships that they filmed in Malta, on a very. Do you remember Titanic? You remember that in Mexico they had a similar sort of tank, which if you filmed it from a certain angle, the tank then looked out into the water, gave the impression that it was actually on the high seas itself, and that's what they did. One of those ships kind of burnt down in the night, you know, which means you've got to rebuild the thing, and then you've got to put time back because we need to film those shots on it. Can we use the other boat for periods of time? Well, yes, for some of the stuff, but it's very clearly not the same boat because you're filming it from one side to the other, so it's all a bit confusing. So there's a bunch of stuff happened, and at the heart of this whole thing is VIC Armstrong, holding the whole thing together action-wise anyway. And once again, he does exactly what you would expect him to do with his team of stunt professionals and his co-coordinators, Dickie Beer and Jordi Caceres. They're in there and they are training the local guys, because they would have had multi-stunt guys in there as well. Jordi would have brought some Spanish guys with him for doing the horse riding, and there would have been, those stunt guys who were in there doing the falls and the fights, and for the actors as well, because the two leads, particularly Gina Davis and Matthew Modine, are right in the thick of it, as we shall see as we explore Cutthroat Island. Here it comes. So let's take a look at Cutthroat Island. It's just full of explosions, lots of great doubling going on in this picture. Claudia Pacifico is Gina's major double. Carolco, remember them? They were the ones that did Terminator 2, Total Recall, Basic Instinct, good track record. This is a nice dive as well at the start. Look, bosh, that's called bulldogging. That's an old Western way of bringing down a horse and then kicking your man in the teeth. There's the husband. He did Die Hard 2 Cliffhanger, and he wants her right in the thick of it. Now, this is Mark Anthony Newman. Mark is a stuntman, and he is the second black stuntman on the British Stunt Register. He joined in 1987. This is the first. It's Clive Curtis. He joined in 1976. 11 years between two black stuntmen. Extraordinary, isn't it? Good shot this. I quite like the going through the smoke. These are the two ships I was telling you about, and the explosions on this are just amazing. When she goes, now look here, this is her at the top of the fall, right? She will go to there, and then there's a cutaway. Now, she may have fallen from there to a lower level, but I suspect, because you can't see her face, it's going to be Claudia, the double, and going to go back. That's going to be a full fall into a landing rig. But then what they do is, look, they do this. That's very clearly back projection, and that's Gina falling away, and then will land just very awkwardly at the bottom. But that's not... It seems very odd that all of a sudden there's this... In this movie that they're throwing the kitchen sink out, they've got back projection going on. It seems a bit peculiar. This is stuntman Paul Jennings. He turns up in the picture, gets the awful job of having to frisk herself. I wonder if she's carrying a weapon. Well, she doesn't appear to be carrying one there. And swordplay, routinely going over and over and over again. Michelle Noren, one of the doubles there as far as the swordplay is concerned, doing as much work as physically possible. Lots of stuff here on the boat. Any excuse for explosions, you're going to have guys reacting. This is a great sequence. This is that whole carriage sequence. So slowly, look, she pulls the punch back and, misses by about, miles. So she's having the fight on the top. Again, it's going to be a combination of her. This is very clearly the two actors, and then the doubles in the long shots. Brian Bowes is going to be part of that horse team as well. Very fine horseman. Now the roof sequence. This is very strange. She climbs up onto the roof, runs out the other side, through the window, down and into the carriage. And then she pops up and, hey, look, it's her. It's not her. Watch this very closely. I'm suspecting that is a stunt double. I don't even think it's a stunt woman. I think it's a stunt man. I think it could even be Dickie Beer. Just the look of the man. Coming down here, slowly, and the timing has to be absolutely right. But the amount of people that are telling me, oh no, that's Gina Davis, it's just ridiculous. It couldn't possibly be her. It's way too complicated. As landing in the buggy now, and then you just see the position change slightly, and then bang, there's an edit there. And I wouldn't be at all surprised if she's been in the carriage and is coming out, and they do this pickup shot, and then they've done the original shot with the stunt performer. I think That's what that is. I'll show you a shot later on where, in close-up, they're not even remotely interested about seeing the stunt double. That's Matthew Modine, but later on, it most certainly is not. So lots of great stuff going on there. The Swordmaster on this picture, a guy called Nino Zamperla. Got a fairly decent track record, and there's a huge amount of swordplay going on in this picture. And of course, doing mass swordplay when you've got the leads in the front and those individuals in the back, everything's got to be covered. Look, who's that? Because that's clearly not Matthew Modine. I'm suspecting that that's going to be Gabor Prioch, who was his stunt double on that. And nice explosion followed by a good dive, you know. But again, Rene asking his wife to do everything. Fan descenders. This is what had been created for Green Ice, you remember? They're both on wires going through there. And here, again, fan descender for the cliff jump at the end as well. The two of them on wires, their body positioning makes it very clear that they are wired for that entire fall. It's one of those things that you just cannot escape to see, really, falling down the cliff face. And then, of course, those great big explosions from one side to the other, and boy do they love an explosion. Get a load of that. Absolutely magnificent stuff. Visually very exciting. There it is. It looks great. If you've never seen the film, don't believe the hype, right? I mean, there are certain things you have to take into consideration afterwards, but for the duration of the picture, it's a good old-fashioned swashbuckling belter. I enjoy it enormously. Frank Langella scares me half to death. I mean, it's just... I'd love to have seen Rennie Harlan working with him and developing Dogue, the character, because I'm not quite sure where this character development has come from. A comic book, evidently, because he plays it in a very odd way. He's constantly growling and sneering and... you know, when... Here's a good example. Batman and Robin. I know. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have mentioned it. But while we're on the subject of poor delivery. So it's a Batman and Robin movie, right? It's the George Clooney Batman vehicle. He's already apologised to the world for his performance. And yes, his Batsuit did have nipples. Still. It's called Batman and Robin. It's not called Iceman, you know. But Schwarzenegger is the Iceman character, or the whatever he's called, and he's the one who appears in 90% of the picture and has so many bizarre lines, cool down, and all that dreadful nonsense. Well, that's always the way that I think Frank Langella is playing this character. He's playing it like this. He's playing it like he was in Batman and Robin and playing the Schwarzenegger character. So there's some odd stuff going on. But action-wise, it's full-on. Gina Davis does a great deal. There's no doubt about that. Matthew Modine does a great deal. And they've got... You know, they have to do a great deal of training to get to that stage. There's a lot of choreography. Doesn't look like they're doing a lot of short takes either. You'll do maybe a full take in certain places, and plus the fact that Rennie wants his wife on screen almost for the entirety of these sequences. So when doubles are used, they're used sparingly. But you know, she injured herself, as I mentioned in there. She's they've attempted the roll down the roof and into the carriage during the chase sequence for real with the actress. I mean, what on earth? No, you know. Now, whether they've attempted that prior to Vic being involved, or they've done it I would imagine they've done it at a much slower speed, and the horse is practically walking underneath. So doing it like that, and then hopefully she will realise, and the director will realise, this is really not going to work very well. This is very complicated. Let's not do this. And she's been doubled. She's very clearly been doubled. I don't want anybody for a moment thinking that she's done this. And if anybody tells you that she did, put them in my direction, because I'm sorry, I'm not having it. It's way too complicated. You only see her face at the end of the gag, which means that for me, if you'd see her face the entire way down, she had the hair tied back perhaps so you could see her face. Fair enough. She would have been wired most likely, or there would have been some additional form of safety system involved. But that is a seasoned stunt professional coming out through that window, rolling and bouncing. I wouldn't be at all surprised actually if it's not Dickie Beer himself, because it's just the moment. I've been through it half frame by half frame, and there's just one moment where you possibly catch the sight of a partial face. It could be him. He's not terribly tall, so maybe from a distance perspective it is. But I think that's him coming out through that, coming down that roof, and then landing in the carriage, and then, boom, there's a cut. And if you look at it, it's only, I've showed you there I've slowed down that sequence, and it's just the sitting position. As they come to sit down, there's a slight change in position, and Gina, then the face arrives. Maybe early days, it's not face replacement, but it's something very similar, and they've matted on. They've done 2 takes. They've done her sat in the carriage coming out, and they've done Dickie possibly coming down the roof and landing in the carriage, and then they've spliced the 2 together just for a moment. There's a great deal of back projection going on in this picture as well. Lots of great real location stuff, but when she's falling anywhere, that's back protection, back protection. She could have done with back protection, back projection. So, a lot of great bits and pieces. I think it's great fun. Go and watch it first, then analyze it and rip it to pieces, because what did they say it was? Nearly 100 million to make. At the box office, it made 10 million. $10 million it took at the box office. If I tell you that on the same day, Mel Brooks had a picture called Dracula Dead and Loving It, starring Leslie Nielsen. Do you remember this? It took 30 million at the box office, and it was only made for 10. Made for 10 million, took 30. That is a profit. You make a movie for 100 million and you take 10 at the box office, you are up the creek without a paddle. And sadly, heads had to roll. The Cariola wrapped up, and a couple of other companies wrapped up, and there were movies that weren't made, and Rennie Harlan went very quiet for a period of time. So if you're going to make a movie, make sure it's a good one, all right? Get it all backed, get it all sorted, and then we can review it on this show. And put lots of action and stunts in it so we can talk about those. So that's it for this week. Next week, I know you've been waiting, and I apologise. Next week, Delta Force. It's Chuck Norris time. Chuck Norris, Lee Marvin, and an airliner full of hostages. And there's some terrific action in that. Old school stuff, so we're going to have a look at that. And Wednesday for the podcast, Friday for the YouTube show. Don't forget to check out the Pod Dojo Network. They are responsible for the podcast. And until next time, it's bye for now.